All right, today is May 4th, and we're going to go over this check writer program, which is in your book on page 610. Now, I want to mention a few things about it. I didn't spend a lot of time with this, just so you know. So I didn't take the time to do a few things, such as, first, the spacing isn't the way it is in here. I didn't really care about it, so I just was more concerned with the idea. Second, I realized after I did it, I've got an off by one error. So in other words, if I put this in 1920, 85, mine comes back 1,920 and 84 cents because I'm off by one. Okay? But one thing to realize is if we take this number right here, because this is basically the key to understanding the algorithm, and you probably already do, but in case you don't. But if I take that number right there, okay, and I separate it out, you know this, I've got 1,000, 9 100s, 2 10s, 0 1s, and 85 cents. That should make sense to everyone, okay? But what I can do when I'm doing this is if I take that number right there, if I take 1,900, that number, okay, and I divide it by 1,000, what's the answer? It's no joke. What's the answer? The answer is 1. All right, but if I take that number and I modulo it by 1,000, now what's the answer? So I can work my way down like this. Does that make sense? All right. So now, after I've done this, I've figured out my thousands, and now I've got this answer, and then I start with this, and it's pretty much the same kind of thing. I divide that by 100, and I get 9. I modulo that by 100, and I get 20.85. And then the cycle continues. Does all that make sense? Because if it does, there's really not that much to the program. The hardest part of the program is to make sure that like if it's 19, that you say 19, something like that. Not like 10-9 or 9-10 or whatever. So the way that I did it, I think I mentioned this the other day, I went back and I kind of massaged what the author did. I liked what he did better than what I did. So I made some changes to it, incorporated some of my stuff, and used a few of his ideas. All right, so I'm going to show this right now. Now, anyone who turns this program in, you're eligible for an extra 25 points. So if you want to do it along with me, fine. If you don't want to do it along with me, then you don't want to do it along with me. This one, more or less, is optional. All right? But the other ones, there are people who I looked, and there's about 9 people already who are signed up to take the advanced class in fall. And out of those 9, there's at least 1 or 2 that probably have shown less than 50%. All right? And some of those people, they're not here now, but some of those people who have shown less than 50%, they've turned in, you had maybe 6, 7 assignments? They've turned in like 2. I don't know how those people expect to pass. The only way they can is if between now and that, the last day I can possibly accept anything, as far as I'm concerned, is Sunday, May 22nd. Now that doesn't mean, I did, Jeff. I turned it in at 11:59 on that day. Monday, we have what's only can be considered a stellar in-service here, Monday morning. And then in the afternoon, there's supposed to be a BTC picnic. I'm such a social guy that usually I drive by the picnic area and I just keep going. All right. But if I feel like it, I'll stop. And if I don't, I've already invited John. John he can be my proxy. All right.
I'll be ready.
There you go. Yeah, but we go in different directions. You're not going towards Illinois. So, all right. But I don't want to sit there. I have to have everything in by 12 noon on Tuesday the 24th, I'm sorry, Tuesday the 24th. I've got a meeting. I've already got to come back Thursday in the morning because I'm part of this thing that they're working on with different high schools for articulation. And I've got stuff I've got to start preparing for that. It's not a lot, but I don't want to sit there. I mean, that's the beginning of my vacation, so to speak. All right? And I'll tell you about already what I'm starting to do on my vacation. I'll let you know that in a couple weeks. All right. So I grabbed all this stuff here, and I've saved it out there as a comment, so you can use it if you want to. All right, whatever. But so I just want to show you this. So when I go out here, I've already got the program. As I mentioned, the program's already written. Here's my program, okay? But as I said to you before, so if I grab that number, 191960, right there. So I'm just going to run the entire thing. I'm going to run the program. First of all, I ask you to enter the date. Java does have a date class. We haven't gone over it, but it does. Where we could have actually gone in there, or you've got the smarts that what we could have done is I could have taken a number like this, like today's date. And we could have taken that number, all right? We could have taken that number and we could have busted it up into three numbers, correct? Where, months, days, and years. And months would have had to have been between 0, 1, and 12 days, depending. And years, we could have put something in there, whatever. But I didn't do that. So I could have run this, and I could have put, hello, and it would have had hello in there for the date. All right, so that's another thing that definitely could be fixed on this. But that 19, I'll pay myself. And 1960. So you see that it comes out there correctly, but here it's off by a penny. And that's my calculations. But I will tell you, there are some programming languages, and you know this because I believe C# is one of them, that have currency for one of their data types. Typically, when you work with currency data types, you're going to be much closer to an actual correct answer when you're working with dollars and cents than you would be if you use floats or if you use doubles. Now, Java actually does have a currency data type, but then you can go in. I started to do that, but then I went into locales. So if you wanted to, you could put in pounds or yen or whatever. And I just thought, this isn't worth it. All right. So if I was going to do this for production, I'd have to make some changes. This program would increase much in size, is what I'm telling you. All right. So taking it from the top again, there's the comment. You see all that stuff. I decided to try to make it at least a little bit GUI. So the first thing I did, I started a new project, and I mentioned to you the other day about starting a new project. I just called it CheckWriter. And the first thing that I'm doing in here is I'm importing the JavaX Swing JOption pane. So I have a JOption pane in here. All right. Some of you you seem to be tethered, or you really like using the scanner class. I don't know why, but you do. All right. And as long as you use it and you use it correctly, it's not that it's that important, but you're making something that's totally non-GUI when you're doing that. And I would not suggest that. The other thing that I imported was I did put in here, I wanted to put in some kind of a decimal formatter. The biggest value that I'm allowing you to put in is $10,000. So that meant that when I set up my format, I put the $sign in there, then number, comma, number, 0.00. All right. So let me cut this down a little bit here. And as you can see from the top here, I put everything in main. I tried to keep it simple. It's already around 200 lines. All right. So there's enough in there already. Okay. So what I did was I came in here and I said the minimum check amount, I just said was going to be $1. Yeah, granted, you can make checks out for less than $1, and I get that kind of thing. Most of the time, if it's under a certain amount, you're probably not going to use that anyway. And I will tell you. So here's me going off on a tangent, giving you a little free political commentary. Please don't be one of those people in front of me at McDonald's that buy something and it costs $1.73, and you pull out your frickin' debit card and you don't know how to use it. I was talking to a woman that was working at Walmart one day, and I said, you know what? You need a line, and that line has to say, this line is for idiots who don't know how to use their debit cards. And then all the people who don't know how to use them.
Don't you just...
Yeah. But I watched this woman one day, and I don't even have one. And I could, like, lady, you're doing it backwards. And the lady kept telling her, but she just kept putting it through. She put it through there like 8 times. Finally, the lady working there said, ma'am. She very nicely took it out of her hand, put it through there, and it worked just fine. But that's just like people who get up to a line, when you're in a hurry, and they go, what should I order? No, you should go to the back of the line and think about it. All right? Okay. So here's what we have in here. We've got a date. And notice I just made it a string. There is a date type in Java, but I just made it a string. All right? I called it CDate for check date. The payee, all right, who we're making the check out to, the amount, which I originally read that in as a string, because again, I'm using a J option pane, but then I'm going to convert it to that. All right, and now that I look at that, I don't know why that F is in there. I think I started, I know why it is. I played around with it. I made it a float just to see if I could get rid of that error with it being off by a penny, but it still was off. So then I figured, well, the mistake is in my calculation, so I just left it alone. All right, this will be the actual check that I write out. So that line that you see there in blue, that'll be all this stuff that's in here. Okay, and then finally, we've got my decimal format. I'm asking because I don't know. Everybody in here. Is there anything there that's in the blue that anyone has any questions? What I did, why I did it, etc. Anything in there in the blue? Yes.
Why did you use the float? Or for the min-max?
Oh, yeah. You're right. These should both be changed back, too. Because since I made them doubles, you shouldn't have the Fs. Thank you. You are correct. Like I said, when I was off by a penny, I changed it. I changed everything from doubles to floats, and it still didn't matter. So I changed it back to doubles, but I forgot to remove the Fs.
Oh.
So that was on me.
I was curious.
What's that? My bad? Type of thing? All right.
All right.
But thank you. Very good question. Anything else? Anything in here that doesn't make sense? Going once. Going twice. All right. Then it's the kind of stuff that you'd expect. This is, again, very typical for stuff that we've been doing. All right. Input the check date. Since it's a string, I can do it directly. Input the payee. Since it's a string, I can do it directly. Input the check amount. Well, that I have to convert over, right? Because remember, what I put in there is naturally going to be a string. All right. Now, again, as I said, if I was doing this, if this was an actual application program, I could see this thing being at least 1,000 lines. Because there'd be a lot of intricate stuff that I'd be putting in there for the date. All right. And if you talk to the second year people or people who have gone through the program, you'll know that even though you may not have had a lot of it in the past at least, I've given, and John will, I think, will attest to this, I've given programs where people have to worry about dates. And for example, you have to worry, you might have to give me a year, 1,000, and another year, 2,000. And I want you to show me every year between those that's inclusive in that list that is a leap year type of an idea. All right? And most people go, well, it's every 4 years. That is not true. All right? The year 2100 will not be a leap year. I'd love to say that I'll be here to find out, but the chances are probably not that good. All right? But if it's divisible by 100, it has to also be divisible by 400. So 2100 won't be a leap year, 2200 won't be a leap year, 2300 won't be a leap year, 2400 will. All right? So again, this right now, I'm just handling it like a regular string. Okay? Not really anything more. The payee, I might have gone in there and run a trim function or something like that on it to make sure they weren't just putting in blanks. There's all sorts of things I could have put in here. You know this now, that that we looked at it in this past chapter. There's is digit and is letter. So I could have checked, and the only thing I could have allowed, for example, would have been letters and maybe spaces. But then you run into all these problems. People have hyphenated names. People have an apostrophe in their name, etc. And so then the next thing to do would be to come in, and Java does support this, would be to come in and create a regular expression pattern. But I will tell you that if you look at a lot of web forms, what they put in there, if they're putting in regular expression patterns on the forms, a lot of them for names, just leave them. They don't put anything special in there. All right? Even first names, because if you start to incorporate people who are from other countries, they may have tildes or other things in their name, and sometimes it's just not worth it. So you say, well, that means a person could put numbers in there. I guess they could. But you know what? If I'm working at a company and you tell me your name is 123 and your last name is 456, and you run your MasterCard through there and it works, I don't give a damn. I don't. All right? Okay, so now this is the first one where we really do have to worry about it. This is the amount. So again, I like to do this because it tells them to enter an amount. So this will say between $1 and $10,000. Again, I said this to you the other day. This is no joke. You really and truly can't account for human ignorance. You can't. So if somebody keeps putting 0 in there, or a negative number, or a number greater than 10,000, they're just going to be stuck in this loop right here. So what I tried to do was, at least this time, I said error. Enter at least $1 and no more than $10,000. All right. What you find, and I've done this myself, is on a lot of the programs that we've done, I just grab whatever's in here, and I repeat it down here. The problem with doing that is if somebody literally is that ignorant, maybe they're a young person, that young, or they just really and truly don't understand. But I figured by putting in what I put in right here, that's about the best I can do. Again, you may agree with that, you may not agree with that. All right? And then earlier I mentioned to you this thing called the check. That's where we're going to actually end up writing out the check. Okay? So we've got some components in there already. We know the date, we know the payee. All right? Some of the rest of it we still have to work with, but when we come down here, we can start to display the check already. And so there's the date. All right, I just left justified. I tried playing around with it with tabs and stuff. It never looked right. All right, pay to the order of, and there's the payee. You can see some of the tabs that are in here, and some of them didn't even work. I did the formatting for the amount. All right, and nothing new in there, but this is the other routine that I wrote. That's called word number, and that right there has to take this right here and try to convert it to this right here. Does that make sense? And again, the way that that was done, by and large, was using that same formula that I showed you at the beginning of class when we started to talk about this. So going down to there, really basically through about line 79, are there any questions? In all seriousness, and I'm not, if you get it, that's great. But next semester, the idea, or at least ideally, we're going to pick up the pace, just so you know. Why? Because after 9 weeks, I don't want to do this anymore. I want us to get into Android. All right? And the only way we can do that is to quicken the pace. All right? And what does that mean? Well, that means that some of the stuff, like recursion, which is a very short chapter anyway, I'm not even going to cover it. The database stuff will probably have minimal coverage. We've typically had problems with the drivers when we work with databases. All right. And some of the other stuff, the GUI, I'm going to combine both GUI chapters together. You may only have like about 3 programs, and then we're going to do something Android-ish. All right. All right. So the next thing that's in there as it says, this word number method is going to attempt to convert a number. I've got to an English word, but really to English words. All right. So notice there'll be 1, 2, 3 arrays in here. All right. And I call them the ones, the teens, and the tens. All right. The ones are going to hold everything from 1 to 9. But notice, okay, that I've literally got in the zeroth component, I put it blank. So the ones 1 equals 1, the ones 2 equals TWO, etc. Make sense? Didn't have to do that. But again, I've mentioned that to you before, that if I was going to have this set up like this and it was going to say string months, I would make this first one blank and then do a January, February, March, April, etc. Because to me, that makes much more sense doing that. And people, well, you're wasting stuff. You're not wasting anything. All right, it's a string array that holds the empty string. But if it makes your program more readable and it makes your program more understandable, that's what you should be doing. All right, so as it says, that's the string array that's going to be used for the hundreds and also for the ones. 100, $1. So that would be used twice. All right, type of an idea. Then I've got the teens. And I did the same thing. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Didn't have to do it that way. You might look at that and go, that really reads ugly. Well, again, it could have been prettied up, and there's a few things that could have been done for it. That's how I did it. All right. And then these are the tens. Again, nothing there. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So again, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in the tens, sub 9 equals 90, which again, to me, made much more sense to do it that way. You may or may not agree. And I'll leave that up there for a minute, but is there anything then up from this point where we started talking about it down to here? Okay, like I said, I'll leave it up there. That doesn't make sense. Why I did something, what I did, etc. Bless you. Because I've said this to you before, that especially when you're in your first year, the hallmark, what you have to do is you have to understand what's going on. I may have mentioned it to this class or one of the other classes that you have with me. I don't know. But I always remember Doug Tabbitt, who used to be an instructor here, he would always say that if it was the first semester, he would answer a question. Somebody would come up and ask him a question. He'd answer it. All right. In the second semester, he'd say, it's in your book. I think it's around chapter 4. All right. In the third semester, he'd say it's in the book and turn away. And in the fourth semester, he wouldn't even acknowledge you were there. And that's a little bit out there. He would still, if you came up with a complex question. But John took classes with Doug, and I think he'd pretty much agree that's kind of how he was. All right? And you have to be like that. I'm trying to still get that idea across to some of the second-year people who, for whatever reason, don't seem to realize that 2 weeks from Saturday, they're going to be graduating, and they're done here. All right? And John will tell you, too, that with some of the people who are in there, and I'm not hitting on anybody, but some of the questions that they ask, they're asking questions with website stuff that were actually answered, stuff that you did back in the 157 class. Now, maybe that's a memory retention problem, and that's a harder thing to handle. All right, but if they say, well, I never learned how to do that, well, that's pretty scary then. All right, hopefully you had a chance then. Again, any questions on what I did with the ones or with the teens or with the tens? I think you all realize the order in which those are put in wouldn't matter. All right. So then you can see the variables that I have in here. These are all local variables. Thous for the thousands value, huns, tens, teens, ones, cents, okay? etc. So again, thousands have got to be between 0 and 10 because 10,000 was the maximum value allowed. Hundreds have to be between 0 and 9. 900 would be the maximum for hundreds. Tens, all right, I guess it could have actually been 0, but I put in here 10 and 90. Teens, all right, you could say, well, wait a minute, 10's not a teen. No, but in the way I did it, it's considered a teen. All right. Ones and then sets. All right. Any question on anything that's in there? All right. Maybe I'm going too fast. I don't know, because you say, geez, I can't keep up my fingers, whatever. So I will, when we get done, I will put it back up there from the top and just say how many people need this and just start moving it down. Okay, I have no problem doing that. All right. As already mentioned, the range is $1 to 10,000. We've already done that check up above when we asked them to enter the check amount. All right. So 10,000 is really the only time that we'll have to worry about something being 5 characters long there. Does that make sense? Because since 10,000 is the max, did I do it like that on purpose? Yeah. Okay. What that means is if it's 10,000, I'm just returning that. Now I don't have to make those checks. Now, is that cheating? You could look at it that way. All right. But all I would have to have done would have been to add, instead of 1,000, I would have had to have added a 10,000 and gone through the same process again. All right. So again, that's how I'm handling just $10,000. So if we get down to here, we know it's got to be between $1 and $9,999.99. And again, hopefully everybody understands that. So now we're going to start picking it off just the way I showed you before. All right. So again, imagine that the amount in there, let's just take some kind of, I'll just take a different value, some kind of a hypothetical value. All right. So let's say that it's 9876.54. All right. So now the thousands is going to be the integer portion of this divided by 100. Well, if we divide that by 100 and we grab just the int portion, if thous is set up as an integer variable, I don't even have to do this. I could just keep it the way it is, but I'm not taking any chances. So again, what I'm picking off right there in that case would be the 9. All right. So if it's greater than 0, I know that there's a thousands component. Does that make sense? If it's not greater than 0, then it's a check for less than $1,000. I have no thousands component in there. All right. So I'm not doing anything. There's no else on here. So the string, what I'm trying to grab here is I want to grab that thous thing and put 1,000. So right now what I should have for my check should be 9,000. That's what I get between what's here and what's here. Make sense? And looking at this, I used what I showed you before. I used the modulo. The author did it this way. I don't know why. Okay. But I just grabbed his. So once we do that, the amount now is going to end up being, when we get done. So again, this is our original amount. And I just made that number up. There's nothing to that number. So far we've got 9,000 in there. We picked off the 9. We've got 1,000. So now we're going to have, what's left is 876.54. And we again want to do that division. But now, and I'm sorry, that should have been 1,000 right there. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to grab that amount. Let's try to line it up a little bit. Okay. And I want to divide that again, but now not by 1,000, by 100. So that's going to give me the 8. So that's what I've done so far. All right. And then I'm doing the same kind of check. The exact same kind of check that we looked at before. So now that I've got that 8, oops, sorry. Now I'm going to be able to come in here and say 9,800. That's what I've got so far. All right. And then after I remove the other amount, now I'm going to be down to 7,654. So 76.54. And I'm doing a similar thing. So there's my tens amount right there. Well, there weren't any tens. Or are there tens? No, there's tens. There's basically, if I divide that by 10, I get what? 7. So now I'm up to $9,870. I don't know if I've got a ones component yet, but so far out of my original number, I've got all that handled. Again, does that make sense? I'm going to come down and do it one more time then. And now I'm down to $6.54, and I'm going to divide that by 1 and take the integer component, and that's going to give me 6. All right? So now I know I've got this 6, and we were told to put an and in there. All right? So what's left is we have to figure out, okay, literally what's left. So we were at 654, we divide that, and then we modulo that, and what's left? Well, now we've got 54 cents left. All right. And we can do another calculation. There's a lot of different ways this could conceivably be done. Like I said, maybe I ran through that quickly, but does the logic make sense to people? All right. I just pull this one out. We could have grabbed a lot of the ones that were in here, but I grabbed this one to try to put together and give you something fairly simple, all right, but something that would make sense. This is a program that we could go back to, and we could add a lot of different things, all right? If you put something non-numeric in for the check amount, we could put exception handling in there that wouldn't accept that. That's the kind of thing we're going to get into next semester. All right? I want to just flip away from this for a second. I promise I'll come right back to it, but just to show you. All right, I want to make sure everybody gets this, and I think you do. I don't remember now where the heck it is, but let's see. Well, while that plays, I'll go back to the code. All right, so taking it from the top here, is there anybody who needs anything that's in here? Again, any questions on anything that's in there? All right, then this was all of our input stuff right here. All right, can't really get all of it in, but there's the rest of it. Anybody who needs that to see that? Any questions on any of that input stuff that was in there?
Can you print it off?
I could, but I choose not to.
Oh, alright. Just figured I'd ask.
That's like I had one of the second year students when I showed you that stuff from how I did the Uber site. She said, yeah, you never put that out there. Yeah, there was a reason for that. Anything on displaying the check that doesn't make sense. Now again, remember, next week will be lab the entire week. All right? And the following week, and we can do Now, if you want, I've got my calculator program up here. We could go through it right now in like 15 minutes if you want to do that. But you don't have to. You've got hard copies of. And if you weren't here the other day when I gave out hard copies, let me know and I'll get you a hard copy. All right. We're going to take that program that's right now totally non-GUI and we're going to recreate it using the Java GUI tools. That's what I plan on doing the last week of class. Anything in there that people need any, like I said, I know pretty much where that being off by 1 cent error is. And as I mentioned to you previously, there are other languages that provide a currency format. It works much better. Even C# isn't perfect, just so you know. It might have an amount, but it's still not going to always be correct. There are very few languages that if you're doing like a loan amortization table, that will be right all the way across. And we'll give it down to the penny, and it will be correct. COBOL is one of those languages because it was built as such an intricate language that it will do that. But you have to write 5 times the amount of code to do what you can do in C# or you can do in C or whatever. Even C, next semester. C has, it has ints, and it has floats, and it has doubles. So it's good. The same kind of thing that you're going to see here. Is there anyone who was not here the other day and did not get a copy of the calculator program, the GUI one? Let's see right quick. I've got about 3 or 4 of them up here, so. You don't have to worry about keying this in or anything. And even the thing that we do in class the last week, I mean, if you think it's easier for you to just watch and not do it, that's okay. All right? Whatever is easiest for you. I want you to have some kind of an understanding of it. But next semester, as already mentioned, again, when I go back to here, and where the hell it's doing here. So we've gone through now 9 chapters from this book. All right? So what does that mean? Why am I doing this? Because next semester, we talk about inheritance. You should already be able to understand what inheritance is. For instance, if I make a class person, okay, and that person's got a height, a weight, whatever, and then I make a class called employee. Employee can inherit from person because an employee is a person. Make sense? So we're going to that's the first chapter. From there, chapter 11 is exception handling. All right? And it's not nearly as hard as it may sound like it is. But you have to learn 2 things with exception handling. All right? How to work with Java's built-in exceptions and how to create your own. Okay? So we'll do that. In chapter 12, I'm going to combine 12 and 13 together. You may like that, you may not. But 12 is a first look at GUIs, and 13 is an advanced look at GUIs. Now, what they actually show in this book, okay, how many people in here, I'm just asking, that are in the C# class really like it because you got your form and you just drag stuff out there? You really like that? Yeah. Okay? That's what we're going to do the last week in class. But think about it. When you're doing all that, behind the scenes, someplace, code has to be written. Whether you realize that or not, it has to be written. In chapter 12, they show you how to do that in Java without any drag and drop. They just show you how to do it in code. It's a neat chapter because it makes you realize some of the complexity that goes into people who actually create that stuff. Plus, it's not inconceivable that you could get a job as a programmer where stuff like that was built before there were GUIs, and it's still out there. So it's important to go through it. All right, chapter 13 is more advanced GUI stuff. Then chapter 14 is the only chapter in the book that's in applets. And an applet you run in a browser. All All right. Back in the day before JavaScript became so powerful, not popular, but powerful, almost every kind of game or anything that you played on the internet was done as a Java applet. Today, not nearly as much. All right. 15 is on creating GUI apps with Java FX and Scene Builder. That's another way that you can create GUIs. As of right now, unless my mind changes, that one we're not going to go over. All right. Chapter 16, recursion, very short chapter. We're not going to go over. And then finally, Chapter 17, databases. All right. I don't know how much coverage we're going to have of databases. But like I said, the goal is by week 10, whenever the heck that is. I did put a calendar up there in the bottom right-hand corner, and I believe the semester starts on a Wednesday. It starts August 24th, and it ends like December 19th or something like that. From now on, from what I've heard, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, Blackhawk's going to go to a 16-week semester. You might say a big deal. It's always been 17 weeks, so we have got 2 less weeks in the school year. And you might say, well, that's a good thing. Well, yeah, if you're a student, but that means that's 2 less weeks that you have to cover material. All right, I'll put that back up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop taping now, and like I said, we'll just call it right here. And then the rest of the period today is lab, next week is lab. I'll take a few minutes on that Monday, the 16th or whatever it is, just to go over this calculator non-GUI program very quickly. And then we're going to just jump in as a class and build it in a GUI format. Any questions on anything?
See the tens.
What?
The tens.
Can you see the tens?
Yeah.
That is the tens.
No, the how you get the tens.
Like
So
that?
It's greater than 1. How come?
If you said, why isn't that 0, or should it have been, maybe it should have.
No, I
All right.
was just wondering. You have the
Oh.
Huns
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
What is
The ones. Oh, I'm still building my string here. So, the ones, Huns. I have to make sure if I'm in certain places that I'm filling up everything. That's why I had to go back and take a look at that. In other words, if it was 9876.54, I don't want it to say 9,000 and leave off the hundreds type of an idea. All right, so that's basically what was behind that. And this,
Oh, okay. So
All right.
it won't just duplicate.
yeah, there is some duplication in there. There's a lot of ways this could be improved. I sure as heck wouldn't say that there wasn't. Technically, if you were a real Java programmer, you'd probably even write separate classes to handle just about everything in there. You'd have a separate date class to handle the date stuff, etc. All right. All right, I'm going to stop taping, but as soon as I get done taping, I'll bring this page back up again.